Hey, everybody. A couple days ago, Prime Minister Netanyahu had a press conference for foreign media. It was an interesting press conference. He opened it up by saying, "Hey, look, I'm alive," and the media were in the room with him. So that put that ridiculous conspiracy theory to rest. In case you didn't hear, there was a conspiracy theory going around the internet that Prime Minister Netanyahu had been killed. So he put that to rest. But then he gave an opening statement, and then he answered some questions. And I just want to play one portion, a few minutes of the press conference where he was being asked questions, because in this clip that I'm going to show you, he dealt with a number of issues that relate to what's going on with the war. And at the end of it, at the end of this clip, he addressed the issue of regime change. So I want to talk about those things in light of what Prime Minister Netanyahu said. Before we get to that, please, once again, there are still missiles flying all over the place in Israel. There was a hit today in the town of Arad that caused a lot of damage. There are dozens of people who were injured. There's a lot of needs on the ground. And Israel 365 has stepped up. We're in touch with a lot of charities, with all the best charities that are dealing with a lot of the issues that are affecting the home front here in Israel. So a great way for you to contribute to that and to help out is to go to Israel365charity.com, click on Israel Under Fire, or scroll down on the page to where it has current projects. Israel is at war, help now. You can click there and you can help out, or you can check out some of the other campaigns that we have there. And it's a great way, again, it's a great way for you to help and participate. All right, let's head over now to Prime Minister Netanyahu.
At the end, what is the task of leaders if you're a leader? The most important thing is to assure the security of your people. And that means identifying danger in time and acting against it. That is a prerequisite for the survival of any biological organism. You have to identify danger in time and act in time against it. You either fight or flight. These are the two options you have. Where can you flee? Nowhere, because Iran can reach any part of the world. So you have to, at a certain point, fight. And this is the juncture where we've reached in time, not too late, but in time. I just will encourage all those who agree with what President Trump is saying, with what I'm saying, to act. I didn't have to convince President Trump of anything. He didn't need any convincing. He acted as a great leader does, to protect his country and to protect the future.
Okay, very important point that Prime Minister Netanyahu made here about Iran being able to reach all parts of the world. So there was a missile attack by Iran. There was a missile fired a couple days ago at the Diego Garcia base, which is further away from the distance that they thought Iranian missiles could hit. And Iran has missiles. They now determined they have missiles that could reach up to 4,000 kilometers away from them. And it should be pointed out that Israel is way closer than that. Those missiles were not designed to attack Israel. They were designed to attack other countries much further away. He also might be referring here to the fact that Iran has tentacles and proxies going as far as South America and all over Africa. They're really everywhere, and that they really were a global threat. So there's this perception out there that this war is over Israel's interests. He also talked about identifying a threat in time, and I talked about this in another video that I just made about this whole issue you're hearing. Was there an imminent threat from Iran to the United States of America? Was the threat imminent? You don't wait until someone who says every day that they want to kill you has an imminent threat before you do something about it. You know, if there's someone who wants to kill your family, and you know that they want to kill your family, they say that they want to kill your family, and you discover that they have plans to kill your family, you don't wait until the threat is imminent, until their capabilities produce an imminent threat before doing something about it. Anyway. That's just an obvious point.
Thank you. Next question. Alex Trayman from JNS. JNS, right behind you, yes.
Mr. Prime Minister, Hezbollah has opened up another front against Israel, launching rockets against Israeli civilians. Now ground troops are inside Lebanon. Is there any hesitancy toward launching a full ground operation to eradicate Hezbollah? And what would eradicating Hezbollah do to transform Israel-Lebanon relations and the greater Middle East?
Look, Alex, I can't divulge our battle plans. Obviously, Hezbollah is not what Hezbollah had been. I said in my opening remarks in Hebrew that they were talking about 150,000 rockets and missiles that they had, ballistic missiles. They had thousands of Ridwan terrorists right next to our fence underground, ready to invade. And we knocked them back. We destroyed the bulk of their missile capacity in 6 hours. We knocked out Nasrallah. We destroyed all the Hamas, or rather all the Ridwan infrastructure right next to our border. We now have a security corridor, a security zone that is there that prevents this kind of invasion. And we have plans for the future. Obviously, our number one effort is geared towards Iran. If the regime goes, you know that Hezbollah goes. But in any case, we're devising our plans in such a way that we could remove this threat as well.
Thank you. Final question from.
Okay, two things I want to talk about in that in that answer that he gave about Lebanon. One is where he talked about creating a kind of security corridor. And a lot of people are looking at that and saying, oh my gosh, this is the Greater Israel Project. This is, every time I go on Steve Bannon's show, he brings that up. He's like, oh, the Greater Israel Project, Israel's taking territory. Look, that Israel is taking Lebanese territory. They're moving their soldiers over the border into Lebanon and they're holding positions. And he says, we have plans. And there was a number of years that Israel held a security zone in Lebanon. And there's a lot of people who view this as like, occupying the territory of another sovereign nation. So I want to talk a little bit about the Lebanese-Israeli border. Now, how was the border between Israel and Lebanon even set? Like, how did that even come to be? Well, the way it came to be was the Sykes-Picot agreement. So the Sykes-Picot agreement was an agreement made between, here, hold on, let me pull this down. I'll pull down the Netanyahu video and let's put this up here. Here, we have it right here. Here, this is what happened was when the Ottoman Empire fell after World War I, the British and the French got together and they chopped up the Middle East. And the reason I'm showing you the whole map of the Middle East here is to point out these lines. Look at the border of Jordan with that sharp angle and these straight lines, and the border between Syria and Iraq. That is this long, fairly straight line. Okay, that's not a river or anything. It's just a long, straight line. If you see straight lines and sharp angles on a map, you know that you're not dealing with actual borders because that's not the way the world is. Step outside, look at the topography. That's not the way the world works. These lines were drawn by French and British diplomats who took a map of the Ottoman Empire out and they drew lines on it and carved it up. The green area was under French control, the orange area was under British control, then there was an international zone, okay? And they created all these new countries that had never existed before, like Iraq, like Jordan, Syria, Lebanon. None of these had ever been countries. They'd never been states. There had never been a Syrian people, a Syrian government, a Syrian nation. There had never been an Iraq. There was never a human being on the planet before this that called themselves an Iraqi citizen. No such thing never existed. There had never been a Jordan. No one in the world was ever a Jordanian. They made up that name. In fact, they named it Transjordan. It then got shortened to Jordan. There had never been a Lebanese state. These are all brand new states. They were brand new countries. For centuries going back from time immemorial before that, these were just vast tracts of land that were governed by different empires, whoever ruled the area. There were warlords and ethnicities that defended themselves and controlled their areas. There was no countries and states the way we know them today. Okay. And then one of the countries they created was Lebanon. Okay. And then in a few years after the Sykes-Picot Agreement, they finally decided on what the border between Lebanon and Israel would be. Lebanon and what was this international zone that would later become Israel would be. And these two lieutenant colonels, one French and one British, named Paulet and Newcomb, two Westerners, two European lieutenant colonels came into the picture, and they're the ones who decided what the border between Lebanon and the international zone that became Israel would be. They decided on it. But then in 1947, the state of Israel was voted on. It was voted to create a Jewish state in late 1947 and 1940, and then in 1948, Israel announced its independence, and immediately was attacked by Arab armies. And one of the armies that attacked Israel in 1948 was Lebanon. And then when the dust settled after the fighting, there was an armistice line. But the Lebanese government never, ever recognized the right of Israel to exist, and still doesn't recognize the right of Israel to exist. What all this means is that by international law, there actually is no border between Israel and Lebanon. I know that might sound weird. What do you mean? Of course there's a border. Let me explain. You only have a recognized border between two countries that recognize each other's right to exist. They recognize each other as sovereign nations. So you have a border. If you don't, if one country does not even recognize the other country as legitimate and as existing, then you don't really have a border, because they don't recognize a border with Israel, just like we don't have a real border with Syria because they've never recognized our right to exist. We do have a border with Jordan because we have a peace deal with Jordan. Jordan recognizes the state of Israel. We have a border with Egypt because Egypt recognizes the state of Israel. There is a border between two sovereign nations that recognize each other. Lebanon does not recognize Israel and declared war on Israel, in which and then there was an armistice line, there was a ceasefire. And Lebanon still does not recognize the state of Israel's right to exist. So there's absolutely no legal basis to say that Israel is invading Lebanon or taking Lebanese territory. These borders are all fictitious and don't even really exist. There is no real border between the two countries. Israel is going to take territory that it needs to secure the safety of its citizens, which goes back to the opening thing that Prime Minister Netanyahu said in this clip, which is that the number one responsibility of a leader is to secure the safety of its citizens. Israel's going to do that. And they'll hold that territory until they know that they're totally secure from any threats coming from Lebanon. Because if the Lebanese government is not going to step up to the plate and disarm Hezbollah, Israel's going to do it. Israel's going to do what it needs to do to protect its citizens. And then afterwards, if the Lebanese want to make peace and recognize the state of Israel, I'm sure Israel will be more than happy to withdraw to a line that's agreed upon, and then there will actually be a border. Okay, I hope this cleared that up. Let's go back to Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Mr. Prime Minister, Jeremy Diamond, CNN. Nice to see you. You've assassinated Iran's supreme leader and dozens of other senior Iranian officials. The result of that so far has been the appointment of a new supreme leader considered to be even more hardline than his father. The Iranian regime is not showing any signs of collapse as of now. So I wonder, what do you say to those who say that killing those individuals is in fact empowering the hardliners in Iran? And are you confident that your strategy will still lead to regime change? And then secondly, if I may, you've also indicated today that you made a commitment to President Trump not to strike these oil and gas facilities in the future. Should President Trump come to you one day and say, oil prices are too high, it's time to end this war, will you listen to him? And do you need the United States in order to continue this campaign alone?
Was that a single question? Jeremy really hogged it, but I'll answer your questions. I'm not sure who's running Iran right now. Mujtaba, the replacement Ayatollah, has not shown his face. Have you seen him? We haven't. And we can't vouch exactly what is happening there. There is a cloud here that's not clear. What we see is that there's a lot of tensions inside the people who are edging for the top. It's not a uniform position. You see that sometimes with the contradictory orders that are given They do one thing and then they withdraw it and so on. I think it's important that they know that if they think they're going to target the world, target the President of the United States and so on, they themselves are being targeted. That creates a lot of uncertainty. We've found that can have an effect. The removal of Nasrallah has never been really been replaced, because some people are not replaceable.
Okay, let me explain what he's talking about here. It seems like a non sequitur. The removal of Nasrallah, he's talking about Hassan Nasrallah, who was the head of Hezbollah for decades and was eliminated during Israel's attacks on Hezbollah during whatever it was, like more than a year ago. Okay, and when he says he wasn't really replaced, he was technically replaced by Naim Qassem. And notice the Israelis have never tried to take out Naim Qassem. You know why? Because Naim Qassem is a weak, pathetic leader. And that's what he means, that Nasrallah was not really replaceable, because Hezbollah, part of Hezbollah's current weakness is the replacement for Hassan Nasrallah, who's been so ineffective. So that's what he meant by that. Let's keep going.
I think the authority and the hold that Khamenei has had is not going to be translated to anyone, not to Mujtaba if he's there, and not to anyone else. But I think this is part of the effort to crack the regime. It's not going to happen in one day. We're 20 days into this war. Yes, we're seeing cracks. We're seeing cracks, and we're trying to propagate them as fast as we can. Not only in the top command, we're seeing cracks in the field. It's sort of like a hollowed out, rotten piece of wood that's holding on the outside, but there's a lot of rot inside. We're seeing some defections. We're seeing fear and trepidation in the IRGC units that are manning the ballistic missiles. You know why? Because they're afraid to die. They're not all suicidal. In fact, most of them are not. So we're seeing cracks, but we're going to hit them again and again. The minimum thing we want to do is, again, erase the industrial capacity that they had to produce these weapons. They'll have to build it from a start, and that's very hard. It's very hard to do underground, too. So they're not going to be able to just take the pieces and move them below the earth. It's going to be a lot harder for them. But ideally, if it cracks enough, and with some other things that I won't get into, yes, the regime could change. Is it guaranteed? No. And is it up to the Iranian people in the final accounting to make use of the conditions that we're doing in? Because at the
Yeah. Okay. So he said a lot there. First of all, about the idea of that the regime is being hollowed out. All of the the questioner was making it seem like, well, there's no sign of the regime collapsing. And his answer basically was, there's a lot of signs of the regime collapsing, but it takes time. We're only a few weeks into this. This is this isn't the Assad regime where Bashar Assad gets on a plane and flies to Russia and the regime's gone. It's a tiny little place. If you add up the populations of Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Israel, Jordan, put them all together, you still don't have anywhere near the size of the population of Iran. Iran is a massive country. So when you see regime change in a place like Libya or Iraq or Syria, which is where you have like a little mafia that's running this small country, the mafia gets taken out, the regime is gone. It doesn't work that way in Iran. It's going to take time. So Prime Minister Netanyahu is laying out here, look, we're taking out their leadership. We're seeing defections on the ground. We're seeing cracks. It's going to take time, but it's going to happen. But also, then notice what he did. He pivoted back to saying the goal here is, the main objective is to take out all of their industrial capacity to create missiles. What he's basically doing in that comment was pivoting away from regime change being the goal. He's saying, listen, our goal here is to make sure that they have no ability to produce weapons, to remove the threat. That's the goal. And we're doing it. If the regime falls, great. That's the ideal. It's the ideal. But even if the regime doesn't fall, what he was essentially saying there is that even if the regime doesn't fall, whatever is left of it is not going to have any ability to threaten anybody. And it probably will fall at some point. Let me tell you what I think is going to happen in terms of the regime change issue. Here's what this is my conjecture, my prediction, that the Americans are focused on the Straits of Hormuz, on keeping that shipping lane open. And when that's secured, they might actually say, okay, we're kind of done here. The Israelis are focused much more on the mainland in Iran, in degrading the IRGC, taking out leadership, hitting the Basij, hitting IRGC targets, and weakening the regime. And that's why every day you're hearing, if you follow this, every day in the headlines or on Twitter, you'll see it on the news, that more and more commanders in Basij and IRGC are being taken out. Layer after layer of the leadership is being taken out. And the Iranian people have not been called back out into the streets yet. And that's great. They shouldn't be. If you're sitting at home wondering, how come the Iranian people haven't come out into the streets yet? It's because there's no reason to. There's no reason for them to come out. What do you mean? Don't we want the regime to collapse? This is not a Netflix show. It doesn't have to happen quickly. It's going to take time. It's very simple. The worst thing that could happen in this war, the worst thing that could happen is the Iranian people coming out into the streets too early. If they come out into the streets and they start getting mowed down, if they come out into the streets and there's still enough strength left in the regime, in the Basij and the IRGC to suppress those protests, it'll set things back tremendously. It'll make it way, way more difficult for them to come out yet again. So long as there's nothing, let me say it another way. With every passing day, the IRGC and the Basij are getting weaker. The regime is getting weaker without people being in the streets, which means the best time for them to go into the streets is when the IRGC and the Basij, when the regime is at its absolute weakest. And that means they should just wait. They should wait and wait and wait. Let the Israelis do their thing. Let the Americans do their thing, degrade the regime as much as possible. And then at some point that we don't know when it is going to be yet, what I'm predicting is that President Trump is going to make some sort of announcement calling on the Iranian people to come out. It'll probably be echoed by Prime Minister Netanyahu, and then probably also be echoed by, I don't know, Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi or whatever. And that's when the people are going to come out. And when they do, there will be air cover, drones, maybe helicopters. There will be air cover over the protests, protecting the people from the regime. Okay, and that's how I see things playing out. That's what my expectation of what's going to happen. All right, that's enough for this one. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this helpful. Hope you found it interesting. I think I'm going to make a whole separate video about the Sykes-Picot agreement and the history of the modern Middle East, just so that people understand, how we got to where we are and why this whole chopping up of the Middle East that was done by these French and British diplomats 100 years ago has actually caused a lot of the problems. Well, at least it's been part of a lot of the problems that we have in the Middle East today. That would be an interesting topic. Maybe I'll address that. Let me know in the comments what you think about that idea. And thanks a lot. Thanks for watching. Thanks for sharing. And thanks for subscribing. God bless.